I actually started seeing commercials not only of Jay Dyer, but Jay Dyer as Klaus Nutschwab. And I thought to myself, wow, this is going to be great. Within the week of that release, the Tuckins goes off the air as the most popular thing in all of mainstream news, which is just like boom, gut punch. Then they start leaking, and who's they? Is it the Tucker crew? Is it the Fox News crew? Who's giving this stuff to Mediaite? Videos in which he talks about his disappointment with Fox Nation, which he was literally carrying on his back, and anybody that was subscribing to Fox Nation was doing so for the Tucker Carlson original documentaries and the Tucker Carlson long form interviews. So I thought it would be great to get Jay Dyer's take on what happened with the Tuckins, whether or not that documentary, Let Them Eat Bugs, is still available. Is Fox Nation even still a thing? What he thinks about the entire media sphere right now, especially with the Durham report coming out and the left still having their talking points and the right still having their talking points, and literally zero resolution, all on the heels of Bilderberg 2023 this weekend. A lot to discuss, Mr. Dyer. So how are you, and how in the hell do you get contacted by Fox News to become a part of Let Them Eat Bugs?
Thanks, dude. Glad to be back. It was really cool to meet you in person finally, and to see you as an actually incarnate being, not a discarnated internet screen face. So yeah, we had a good chat. Got to hang out, do some interviews. That happened because when I was going to Austin, we do live events, and we did one in Austin not too long after I met you in Nashville. And we got down there in Austin, and there was a producer of Tucker's who was a big fan of the stuff that we put out, and we met up with him, and he said, "Hey, we got some ideas. Want to throw in a Tucker special, and we'll film it while you're in Austin." So when we were down there, we did like 3 things with Alex. So the whole week was in studio with Alex, and then we did our live event, and then Tucker's crew came and filmed a bunch of stuff, and then we did the Man on the Street with me as Klaus in the Austin park. And the funny part about that was there was so many more sequences and interactions that we filmed that were really, really funny. I know that he had to cut it down to about 9 or 10 minutes to be the first part of that documentary, but I wish that the rest of it was available, because there were so many good interactions, and probably not to anybody's surprise, about every one of the Austinites ate bugs, and so everybody was happy to do it. Yeah, man, I'll eat your bugs, dude. Which was sad, because I think it was only one person that turned away the bugs, which to me suggests that some random weird guy dressed in a bald weirdo from space coming up to you, offering you bugs, and like everybody's willing to do it. If you just say it's for the planet, it's for the earth.
And I mean, you're in, just so everybody understands, you're in the full-on Star Trek garb, baldy cap on top with a microphone, like chasing people around with a little dainty walk, with a little pep to your step. And people are signing up.
Yeah, it was so weird. It was like a little mini Jamie Kennedy experiment where we, did this thing, and they kind of felt like maybe it was a joke at first, so maybe that's why they were willing to do it. But that was kind of an idea that I didn't really think they would take seriously. I was just batting it back and forth with one of the producers, and he was like, "Actually, that's pretty funny. Why don't we? I'll get a spacesuit off of eBay. Like, you can wear it. I'll buy a bald cap." I thought he was joking. I didn't think he was being serious. And then when he shows up to the event, he's like, "All right, I got your costume. You ready to put it on?" I was like, "What? Are you serious? You really did get a bald cap and a spacesuit for Klaus." But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, there was this whole segment that was really serious where we did a whole lecture on the history of oligarchic control of food. And that got whittled down to like 30 seconds. But that was actually like a 45-minute lecture on the history of how the elites utilize food as a form of warfare. But anyway, I don't think that literally, that segment, it's not like Klaus called in and was like, "I want you to fire the Tucker. This was over the line." That's what I was playing with in my head, was that I accidentally got Tucker fired. But No, I think that, and I don't have like any super inside info per se. It's just that I think Alex is probably right with the analysis that he just said too many over the line red pill things, and then it was just kind of mounted up, and there was just a point where it's like, all right, that's enough. We can't do that anymore. So I think that's what happened in my view, but I don't have any inside line on that.
Well, I think it was more than one thing.
Yeah,
I think Alex was actually correct in
yeah,
pointing out that the speech, I think it was out at Oxford, where Tucker Carlson broke down good and evil as more
yeah,
than an
exactly.
abstract idea and laid out essentially what was happening as evil may have been the final straw. I think one of the other reasons that they got rid of the Tuckins is it's actually election season right now.
Yeah.
And he not only was being, I think, more fair to Trump than anybody else in exposing the actual corruption surrounding him, but he's also bringing on RFK Jr., who in many ways has gone beyond Trump when talking about the deep state, the Department of Defense, especially in regards to the hate and lie shot. So, from what I'm reading in the media, and of course there's conflicting reports, at first they were saying he was only making like $1.9 million a year. Then it was $20 million a year. That's more than likely what they were paying him. But from what I understand, they have him under contract until 2025. In other words, past the 2024 elections. He comes out, he gives his little spiel, his speech, says, hey, I've been in the business 30 years. We could tell you some stories. There are certain things you're not allowed to talk about. That's a real thing. But we're going to do a show here on Twitter. Now, Musk immediately comes out and says, we have not cut a deal with Tucker Carlson. I think he did that purposely to show that he's going to be doing this on his own. Also, from what I understand, he was able to take his two main producers with them and possibly some of the other workers. I think there's still about 7 or 8 of those people back at Fox. But he was smart enough during this time period to realize he was number one, build a home studio, right?
Yeah.
And basically put himself in a self-sustainable situation. Do you think that that show is going to become a reality? And if so, will it be sooner, or will we see some kind of a legal spat with Fox first?
Good question. Yeah, I don't again have any inside info on any of that. I do think that Alex was talking about the meeting that he had, I think, with Tucker in Florida or somewhere a year or two ago, and they had discussed that they had a sense that this might come down the road or something like Alex said something like that. So that's probably what was the motivations to really begin to prepare for the eventual parting of ways, because you just can't have something that's that normie of an outlet, of a news station. And you mentioned some excellent examples, and let's not forget, he's had Colonel Douglas McGregor on. He's had people questioning the Ukraine debacle, and so that's really also red flags for the establishment. So I think that's all what I was saying was contributed to it, and I think they knew that. And Alex said, "Oh, I told him a year or two ago that they're going to let him go." And so I would say so. I don't know anything about legal spats, so that I can't say anything about that. But I mean, I think that's just, I mean, all the better to go do your own thing. I mean, he probably felt held back, from things he wanted to say. I know there was footage about January 6th that they wanted to put out that there was really forces trying to get them to not do it, the full footage. So there's, I think, a lot of things that combined to bring about this departure. But you and I, we've been doing our own media for a long time. We know that it's a lot better than the working under some corporate banner or some other power that's always trying to control what you say. So I think when you get really red pilled, you want to speak freely, and the more freedom that you have as your own a media operation, the better. So I think he's going to be all the better for having his own thing, and I would expect that it will be its own format. I don't know if it'll be with Elon or what, but I'm sure that's going to happen.
Well, what really caught my ear and attention was towards the end of his run with Fox, aside from the speeches, and especially that Oxford speech, you were seeing him go on a lot of podcasts. He was going on things like the Full Send podcast. And I'm sorry, the people that are watching Full Send probably aren't watching Fox News. So that was a big moment. He decried the fact that he was somebody who cheerleaded the war of terror, and he was greatly ashamed of that. He goes
Right.
on the Redacted podcast, and without really being prompted to do so, begins to talk about Building 7. And why can't you ask what happened at Building 7 and how there is this third rail in the media where if you rewind back into 2006 when he's hosting for MSNBC, he absolutely tries to tear David Ray Griffin apart.
Right.
And he is aware of Building 7 at that point. It's specifically brought up in that interview. So there has been a transformation of somebody who I feel like was born into the establishment. He talks often about his father being in the media, but his father also worked with intelligence. This is a guy, Tucker, that's neighbor and buddy was Hunter Biden. And they have, conversations that have been leaked where he was said to do a favor for Hunter because Hunter was telling him the story was false. I think he feels so personally responsible for what he has done in the past. He realizes that he doesn't have what's called white privilege, but he's got literal oligarchical blue blood privilege in that he's a trust fund kid. He never had to do any of this stuff. And then he hit the apex of his career where if you're making $20 million a year, let's be honest, if you've managed your money in any kind of respectable way, in any semblance, you're going to be okay. You're going to do all right. You don't need much more money. So I don't see money as a motivator. Obviously, power and influence are not the motivator because you're not going to have more power or influence in the media sphere than being the number one guy on television. I think that he wants to be the next Joe Rogan, the next challenge to the establishment they didn't see coming. That's my opinion on it, Jay.
That seems plausible. I think you hit on it earlier too when you the real motivations here when you were talking about the spiritual element. And so what I've heard is that he is beginning to look into Christianity and the notion of a real battle between good and evil in a spiritual sense beyond just the idea of everybody kind of being motivated by psychological or deterministic factors. But maybe there's actually a real sacrificing of the next generation to evil. He talked about that in regard to the stuff in that speech that you're talking about, and he referred to it as a kind of an explicitly spiritual evil. And I think that that's probably what may be going on with Tucker. Again, he was kind enough to introduce me and mention me in the documentary, but I don't know Tucker, so I just know his producer, but one of the producers. So I can't speak to exactly where he's at, but that would be my sense is that he's beginning to look at things in a theological sense, and that's just another kind of like, oh, we can't have that, right? Okay, you're going to question, World Economic Forum and Klaus and Bugs. You're going to question, Ukraine debacle. You're going to question Russia collusion. All of that's going to get questioned. Okay, but no, you can't take another step towards the idea that there's spiritual good and evil, because there are spiritually evil people who would like to have that shut down. So I think that's a big part of it too.
And there are people out there right now that are actively trying to play God shamelessly. And the thing that he discussed at the Oxford speech where he says, look, we used to be able to have debates about economics, but at the end of the day, if I was a Keynesian and you weren't, you're more of the Ron Paul type thing. At the end of the day, we both wanted the economy to do well, and we would give our talking points and we would have discourse. He goes, in the trade debate, there is no debate about that. It's either you are for the mutilation and castration and biological disruption of children, or you aren't. And he says, what do we want? An androgynous population? And of course, right now, you see it being pushed with the absurdity of the Sports Illustrated cover. What did they do? They took a kid that started 12 and put them on the cover. And they put Martha Stewart on the cover because, again, it's a 60-plus-year-old woman. They're coming at us from every single angle. And with the trans angle in particular, I constantly point to the work of Martine Rothblatt. Now, when we met, I know that you watched my presentation, and I brought up this book here, Unzipped Genes, as well as From Transgender to Transhuman. Someone actually sent me the hard copy of the book, And I was just blown away because I hadn't read it and I didn't realize that in 1990, I believe this is 97. Okay, it might be 99 at the latest, but I'm pretty sure it's 97. They were talking about positive eugenics and they were
Yeah.
calling it, are you ready for this? In these chapters, genics. Genic works, my perfect monster, creationism. And let me just read you a subsection here of the bioethics of birth on page 106. I know I have a big supporter that sent me this that wanted me to highlight this. Chinese couple want to have hermaphrodite children so they can enjoy the pleasures of both. The portion of the gene sequence that turns on male sexual characteristics is added to a sperm carrying only an X chromosome. The resultant child has both female reproductive tracts. So they're taking charge of baby making in the new century. They're promoting transgenics, and the person that's doing it is the most powerful, rich, transgender person on the planet, Martine Rothblatt, Jay.
Yes, we did a boiler room many episode many years ago covering Martine Rothblatt because when we saw it, we couldn't really believe that was a real thing. We didn't. I haven't gone into the depth of researching that like you have, but yeah, I'm aware of that, and that's kind of I think back when I first heard about this entity in 2016 or sometime like that. That's when I started really making the connection. But hey, wait a minute, there's a connection between and transhumanism, and I think that as you know, we know the topic of transhumanism really well, but a lot of people don't make this connection, and they haven't seen that there's a connection between the attack on human psychology, human sexuality, human biology as a thing that's geared towards moving us in the direction of the acceptance of the technocracy and Skynet. But that's exactly what it is. And so when you get people like Klaus come out and saying that we do have the intention to change your RNA, to change your DNA, we're going to change your actual human code. You have Noah Yuval Harari saying that and even crazier things. People are starting to make the connection and realize, no, actually there is a connection here. And people like Bermas, people like Jay that have been pointing out that connection is there. They've been vindicated. I mean, it's once you see it, it's like, it's obvious, right? You may not have put the two together, but a lot of people still don't even know that transhumanism is a thing and that it's a motivating factor at DARPA, at the Pentagon, you know, that they've been moving towards this with the Brain Initiative, with the lecture that you pointed out from NASA from, 20 years ago or whatever it is. I mean, there's just so many things that vindicate this. I covered the UK Ministry of Defense document from a couple of years ago. That also talks about preparing the world, Europe, for the implementation of transhumanism. The NATO cognitive warfare document that came out a year or two ago. It also discusses preparing for and ramping up and conditioning people to accept basically tech in various forms getting inside the body. Right. That's what they talk about. And we know about this, too, because, you've been covering Bilderberg forever and ever. I remember in 2015 or 16, Bilderberg had Regina Dugan come and give the talk. And she had been at Google and the DARPA or DARPA to Google. I don't remember which one it was. But she basically went and said that the fad that we want out there is body mod, because body mod is the prep phase for human mod, for androids, for transhumanism. So they've been saying it openly, even at things like Bilderberg, since 2014, 15, 16, 17. And I know it goes back earlier. You got a book from the 90s there. But yeah, and in the one last point, too, and Kurzweil says this, too, right? Age of the Spiritual Machines came out in like 2000, 2001.
99.
And then 99, there you go. And then the Singularity book came out in 2005 or 6, and it basically just updates and repeats everything in the other book. So exactly. And it says the same thing right now. I don't know if he talks about his agenda in that book off the top of my head.
What's really interesting about Kurzweil, especially back in 99, is that he went on tour with that book, and people can see a lecture that he gave to C-SPAN. And in it, he admits, he's like, look, I write this down. People are misinterpreting it. I'm saying that the intelligence we're going to create is going to be so convincing that it's going to convince us that we are conscious. Whether or not it's conscience is really up to the eye of the beholder, but it's going to be so smart, it's going to be so human-like that it is going to convince you and most of humanity to make laws protecting them. Okay, so then you fast forward. You talked about 2006 and when he has the singularity, which is at that point at which we are now surpassed by machine or artificial intelligence, and then a straight upward climb in technology. But he is very much like the high priest of transhumanism, and Martin Rothblatt is his acolyte. So he wrote the foreword to Martin's follow up to Virtually Human, which is from 2015. Okay. Now, Martin Rothblatt, as we talked about, that's a 1997 book. All right. Then in 2012, we have From Transgender to Human. Now, what's really interesting is that in 2006, right along the time of the release of The Singularity, Kurzweil gives a TED Talk, and the first thing that he does when showing virtual reality environments on the road to this transhumanist environment is he takes up what? A female form, and just can't wait to talk about all the guys he's dating and why. So he puts on a fake woman's voice. You see the capture in real time, and he decides he's no longer Ray Kurzweil. He's Ramona. All right. And then
I remember this now that you showed me that clip. Yeah, I'd never seen that.
Yeah, he's Ramona. So then you're like, well, that's kind of bizarre. This guy he's the head of the End of Life division, aka the Immortality division, for over a decade now over at Google. You mentioned really quickly the NASA document from 20 plus years ago that lays it out, Future Strategic Warfare 2025, where they talk about the end of the haves and the have-nots. They talk about bioengineered human-like entities, among many other transhumanist ideals, including human-brain interfaces, like you said. Well, you fast forward to 2016 again. That's when Martin Rothblatt puts out Virtually Human, I think a year later, and the Washington Post, the Bezos outfit, Samsung, and Lockheed Martin got together to put together a conference, which you can watch on C-SPAN, called Transformers. So the conference is called Transformers, and the first person that they interview is Martin Rothblatt. So Martin Rothblatt is immediately asked about the bathroom policy in their state because they banned non-biological females from using the female bathroom. He talks about the fact that Martin Rothblatt has won the Billie Jean King Award, which is an award for charitable work in this never-ending saga. And the discussion there turns into mind clones and uploading consciousness into machines and giving these mind clones actual human rights. Now, if that were the end of it, I would have been blown away enough. But what's crazy about this conference, and it's in two parts because it's so long, is the next people at the Transformers conference are representatives of NASA. So NASA comes on, and they start talking about the revolution in 3D printing and rocketry and cube satellites, aka what will become Starlink. They talk about it being a second skin around the Earth, a communication skin. But wait, we're not done, Jay. So one of the other highlights of this is they bring on the CEOs of Reddit and Twitch. And what are they talking about? Content moderation and controlling the narrative. And all of these things have accelerated at a rapid pace in what I call, and what Bilderberg 2018 called, the post-truth world. So fast forward to 2023, 5 years later, the event is taking place as soon as tomorrow. People will be showing up. They usually show up at Thursday. Dan Dix is out there. They were putting up the barricades. Where are we in a post-truth world where Bilderberg is meeting in Lisbon, Portugal, and there still seems to be a complete and total media blackout on the subject, and we still don't even have a list, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, this is wild because I've just been reading Patrick Wood's older book, not the one on Technocracy Rising, but the one that he wrote with Anthony Sutton. It's really good. It's called Trilaterals over Washington. And of course, a lot of the people that are members of Bilderberg are also members of the Trilateral Commission, which is kind of a higher level steering committee that Rockefeller and Kissinger created for Brzezinski to run. And the
And by
weird
the
part
way,
about,
their own
yeah,
documentation, and I was actually showing internal documents from Bilderberg 1972. Their own documentation, the Trilateral Commission documentation, is that conference on the
yeah,
way there. Rockefeller is on a plane with Brzezinski. They're
right.
upset because they can't bring Japan into Bilderberg. It's too Anglo, too Saxon. They don't want outside influences in this largely European forum. So they say, all right, F you guys then. We're going to start the Trilateral Commission. And
Yeah.
within the year, they actually start that out of the Bilderberg group and they bring in the Asian flavor. And it's a little bit more public because they're now ready to get into these new trade agreements with Japan in particular and globally deregulate everything that kept our economy intact, Jay.
Yeah, that's the thing about this old book. You might think, well, this is a 1979, Sutton Wood book. Why would I want to read an old book on the Trilateral Commission? Because it actually is a window into the things that they were planning in the late 70s at Trilateral and Bilderberg. That a lot of that has come to pass, right? So, for example, Sutton and Wood make a big point about the control over food markets, and so they talk about big farming companies, not big pharma, but big farming companies, which I'd actually never thought about this. Like, what about giant corporations like John Deere and Cargill and these other food/farming conglomerates? They were already talking about the need to control this back in the 1970s to change America, right? I know that the elite have always had a view to controlling food, sure, but it goes on to talk about not just increased taxation for middle and upper class, not for the elite class, but increased taxation for upper middle class to shut down businesses to flush out competition. There's a really amazing discussion in the book about the plans for the shutting down of free speech. So they were really worried about narratives getting out of control, even in the 1970s, which is odd because, these people had a lot of control even then. And, here we are 40, 50 years later, and it's like, they basically made moves to almost have complete control of speech on the internet. I mean, nobody really cares about print speech anymore. That's legacy stuff. But I think that, when we look at their older plans and we see them roll out, we can see that that's what they're up to. And so the stuff they've been talking about with the transhumanist stuff, right? I mean, that's the 10, 15-year plan down the road for rolling that stuff out. So I would suspect that Bilderberg, definitely still plays a key role because it's the same Fortune 100 people, Fortune 500 people that go to Bilderberg, that go to Trilateral, and they're just, game planning, war gaming the next year and what they'd like to see pushed, what they'd like to see rolled out. And then for those that don't know, famously, Bilderberg has been present for the selection of many presidents. Bilderberg was there saying, we want Carter. That was a Brzezinski thing. Bilderberg was there saying, Rockefeller basically saying, I want Bill Clinton to be the president. And then you get Bill Clinton. So, and people think, oh, so it's a Democrat thing. No, it's above Democrat, Republican. It's not a Democrat thing. It's a uniparty supra, entity that is sitting above the elected leaders. And this is what people can't figure out, even though people like Barry Goldwater have been talking about it forever and ever and ever. Ron Paul, people have been saying, look to these people as the real handlers to the politicians, right? These people tell the politicians what their talking points are and what they're going to vote for.
Well, you talk about presidential selection and how this isn't a Democrat thing. I'd just like to point out that last year, one of the very few U.S. politicians, and there's always a couple in the politician realm, and then you have the bankster realm, obviously, and within either past or present administrations. But when I say politician, I mean somebody who's a governor, Congress, Senate. Who'd they have? Kristen Sinema. As soon as that happened, I said, hey, keep an eye on Kristen Sinema this year. They're going to push her somehow. Lo and behold, magic happens, and I'm not a Democrat anymore. I'm the new, cool, hip, independent choice that you're supposed to come to. So that tells me that this woman has been recruited. She has now been given an agenda, a script, and she is what they would like the American people to gravitate towards as that happy middle ground when she's anywhere from in the middle, Jay.
Yeah, that's a good point of the sort of new useful centrist, right? The tools might be the useful centrist because maybe we're sick of Biden and his incompetency and just disaster situation, and then maybe there's people that are worried about Trump being too much of a polarizing figure, so we got to control some kind of new centrist thing. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to try to game all of the angles, but. So you were saying that was 2018 where the narrative was controlling the story in a post-truth world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And were you saying that we don't know what the theme of this year's Bilderberg is?
We don't have. So the post-truth world was on the list docket of like the 10 to 15 subjects that they put out. So for those that don't know.
For 2018 or for now?
No, that was for 2018. So for those that don't know, around, I would say 2010-ish, after Alex had already been there in 2008. I had never been to one. I think my first one was in 2012. But they put together a website for the first time, right? All of a sudden, it wasn't a golf club, and it is bilderbergmeetings.org. This is available right now. There is no press. The press contact is media@bilderbergmeetings.org. And basically, if you email them right now, they'll say, be on the lookout. We're going to give our press release. If you look at meetings, they still have not revealed that in 2023 it will be in Lisbon, Portugal. This did not get revealed until the 2nd of June, that day. And those are the bullet points from last year. There was not one mainstream media article throughout the world on Bilderberg outside of Charlie Skelton, who's now been covering this for a decade. He's there, whether he'll be writing on behalf of, I believe he actually got Rolling Stone last time, but he's done The Guardian and some other ones out there. Mm-hmm. So you also get the list of participants. And by the way, last year was disinformation, continuity of government and the economy, post-pandemic health, the fragmentation of democratic societies, NATO, China, amongst them, geopolitical realignments. I mean, this is the who's who. And, you know, you just talked about the selection of presidents. In 2008, in particular, at Chantilly, Virginia, as I document in my film, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, Barack Star, not on the list. You know who was on the list? Hillary Clinton. So Hillary Clinton is officially at the meeting, and then the Barack Star happens to be in the area giving a speech, and guess what? Lo and behold, the old Barack Star has his entire press corps get on the plane that's following him, and they take off. And they're like, why isn't the Barack Star here? And Robert Gibbs said he had a desire to do some meetings that he wanted to keep private. So then, on the same weekend of Bilderberg, the press camps out at Hillary Clinton's home and says, we've got them! They're meeting at Clinton's home. Wow, that's weird. So really in 2008, for those that don't know, there was kind of like this heated inside debate within the Democratic Party. Was it going to be Hillary Clinton? Was it going to be the Barack Star? And then I believe, don't quote me on Joe Biden also being at the 2008 meeting, but he has been at past meetings as well. I think this is where they worked out that, I'm sorry, Hillary, you're not only not going to be the nominee, but we're not making you the vice president. How would you like to be Secretary of State?
I remember this now because I think, doesn't Endgame talk about this, where Alex talks about how Obama went, Hillary and company were at 2008 Bilderberg? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and then just they sort of worked out, okay, yeah, we'll give Hillary, you don't need to be the face of it because Barack can win. We'll give you this over here. Yeah, I remember that now.
This is the mainstream media. Oh, of course. Why would I have anything right? That's all right. We'll do it live, but not live. There we go. So let's see if I can bring it back just a little bit here. Here we go.
We've put together a committee. We are going to be equally deliberative in how we move forward, and we're not going to do it in the press, and we're not going to do it through surrogates.
He then tricked the press corps into staying on the plane as it took off from Washington. He was whisked away to an undisclosed location.
Obama was supposed to fly home. He'd been here in Virginia. He was supposed to fly home out of Dulles, as you know, outside Washington, D.C. The press corps was waiting for him on the plane, and the pilot announced that they were leaving, and Barack Obama was not on the plane.
Is there a reason why we didn't go with him in the motorcade all the way? This is what we're out here for, and now we're on this plane with no candidate.
Again, I understand. There was a desire to do these meetings, obviously, in private.
The press then began to report that Obama and Hillary were meeting secretly in her home.
Well, we continue to follow our breaking news. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton meeting tonight at her house in Washington, D.C.
However, it was later revealed that they never actually met at Clinton's home.
We are hearing actually from Chris Welch, who is our embed with the Obama campaign. Those are the people that took off without Obama and went to Chicago. The spokesman there is in fact confirming that the meeting did take place. They're talking in past tense now, but saying that the meeting did not take place at the Clintons' house. It took place at this point at some place, I don't know where, some undisclosed place.
Yeah, undisclosed called
DC.
Bilderberg, right?
I mean, it's insane, right? Like,
is this the year Bilderberg was at Chantilly, Virginia?
yeah, this is the 2008,
Yep.
and just to show everybody that, because again, they've given us this tool now, right? Whereas, there's jaysanalysis.com. You're going to want to go there. That's Epstein Justice, where I'll just type it in again. Why not? Oh, there it is. Okay, good. So if we go to, I believe it's the 00s. Here we go, and let's see. See, it's so hard to get the participant lists. So that's the one right here. Yep, Chantilly, Virginia.
Yeah.
They're talking about Russia. Cyber terrorism, U.S. foreign policy without change. Let's see if we can get, background. Because they do have lists on here, too. Let's see. You know what? We'll just do this live because it's actually on Wikipedia these days. 2008 Bilderberg list.
I'm starting to think that maybe you're trying to talk bad about my wife, Michael. You're talking bad about people that change.
I even want to bring up that is a tough one.
Well, when I talk about hope and change, I'm talking about Michael.
Let's see. Collins, Clark, Kremlin. Is this the 2008 participants? The 5th to 8? I'm almost 100. Man, I hate it when I can't find exactly what I want when I want. There we go. Wikipedia. Let's see if Wikipedia admits it. Clinton. Yep, there she is. It's right there on Wikipedia that Hillary Clinton, at the 2008 Bilderberg, which you just saw. Okay, there it is. Bilderberg participants. Actually, so this one doesn't even say whether it's 2008, but Clinton is their dog. Let's see if it says the year next to her. Do it again. They're saying 97, actually. That's really interesting. So again, she's in there in the late 90s on the heels of the end of her husband's presidency as well.
Right.
And
right.
I think by that point, she was already a state senator. Okay. And that would be in New York, where they rebranded themselves as New Yorkers. And Bill Clinton put his office in Harlem. Because he was the hip daddy-o, right? Like he was the first black president, Jay. Duh.
I care about all people, especially if you're Monica Lewinsky. If you're a woman or a female, I especially care about you.
So,
would you like to share a cigar with me?
Speaking of dirty sex jokes and the Lewinsky moment, right now, Rudy Giuliani has this new case where somebody in her late 30s was him, and she's now suing him for sexual harassment. Apparently, he was receiving sex from her on some phone call, etc. All that's in the headlines. The thing that really interests me is the fact that she's saying that Giuliani was selling pardons for $2 million that were to be split with Trump and Giuliani. Now, that seems like an outlandish claim, right, with no basis in reality. However, well before this suit, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, Jay, John Kiriakou, a true blue whistleblower, the guy that blew the whistle on torture and waterboarding in particular via the War of Terror, and you can watch it, actually discussed meeting with Rudy Giuliani a couple years ago before the end of the Trump presidency, and him saying that Giuliani got up and one of his aides basically made it clear that $1 million buys your pardon. So, there is a real possibility that some of these pardons were being sold via the Trump administration. I would say that that's probably, unfortunately, the norm. And I think it is something that has to be addressed, and it should not just be taken to the wayside. It should show the systemic corruption by those that you may think are, quote unquote, fighting the deep state, Jay.
I'm not surprised. This is news to me. I hadn't heard of this. Is this allegation in regard to Giuliani? Is this during the period when Trump was running or was president?
Yeah, no, as president, she's saying he was offering these up at the end of the presidency.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. There's always, no surprise level of craziness when it comes to political corruption. Like this, nothing surprises me. But also the timing would be a little suspicious because just like that crazy woman that claimed that to Anderson Cooper that it's sexy.
Yeah,
everybody knows
Carroll.
rape sexy. It's like, wait a minute. So, what, 30 years ago this happened, and then now suddenly you're traumatized and you're coming out. It's like, it should be obvious, I think, that the timing, every time we get people saying, or right before, the run up to election, this, I'm not trying to correct you. I know you know this, but hopefully the audience knows that, right before election season is when all this crazy stuff begins to come out. But I don't know about this, but I would say that I did recently watch a really cool interview that Kiriakou did on YouTube. I forget the name of that channel. It's a channel I'd never heard of, something like K Clips or something like that. But he did a whole sit down podcast, and it was really insightful in terms of CIA operations, corruption within the CIA. So I'm not dissing or disagreeing with Kiriakou. I'm pretty sure that's who that interview was.
Yeah, no, Kiriakou is one of those guys that I have respect for. I have followed, may have not gotten everything right, but at the same time, I have another interview with him where he discusses foreign assets and how if you're a CIA officer,
that's it,
yeah, and you're taking care of these foreign assets, what happens when your foreign asset he's not into women, he's not into men, well, I got news for you. We get those for our assets. And Kiriakou first made this allegation all the way back in January of 2021. Obviously didn't get a lot of press. And now that same allegation is being made by somebody who is suing Giuliani and had a sexual relationship with him. So, I always like to tell people things aren't black and white, man. For instance, Elon Musk will come out there and he'll start calling George Soros Magneto and saying he's evil, and we did a whole thing on that. Well, it happens to be the same day, that Elon Musk has been subpoenaed and now will have to testify in the Virgin Islands Jeffrey Epstein lawsuit. And, he's in a picture in 2014 with Ghislaine Maxwell. Elon Musk has claimed that picture was Ghislaine Maxwell photobombing him, but other stories in the press say that Mark Zuckerberg was actually offered to meet Ghislaine Maxwell through Elon Musk in particular. So where is the truth? I don't know. I'm just reporting on what's out there, Jay.
Yeah, well, and I apologize. I didn't realize that you had done the interview with Kiriakou. I found what I was looking for, so I'll share your interview. I'm not trying to...
No, it's not my interview. I've played on there an interview where he talked about the Central Intelligence Agency, basically tracking.
So it's called Concrete Clips with a K. So if you go find this interview, it's really good. He talks about Epstein there, and what I found really really excellent there was that he admits, oh yeah, this is an intelligence operation, which I think to us is pretty obvious, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe to the public not so obvious, So I would say that the truth is always probably. I'm not like shilling or protecting tech oligarchs. I won't be surprised if anything crazy comes out in regard to Zuck or Elon or whatever. But I didn't know that about the connect between them. I did see today the big Wall Street Journal report that Noam Chomsky had two or some $100,000 moved by Epstein for him to another probably compromised individual, which is very suspicious.
And Chomsky in particular meeting with Epstein well after the Palm Beach arrest. A lot of the things that have come out via the Wall Street Journal from documents that we don't have in the public arena, everybody, are the relationships between 2014 and his arrest. And this is a big deal because these banksters, other than Jess Staley, who has now been caught joking with Epstein about girls or women in Snow White outfits or Beauty and the Beast outfits, that's out there. But you also have what? The bankers joking about the fact they knew he was a and doing so by joking about whether or not he was dating Hannah Montana, aka Miley Cyrus. Okay, not that he was, but it was so well known that he liked girls. They're like, oh, he's going to be dating Hannah Montana next.
Joke. Yeah.
Yes. But that shows you that all of these banksters that are working with this guy know that they're working with a file at the very least, Jay.
Yeah, they don't care because, and another reason they may not care might not, I mean, bad morals, I'm sure it makes sense. But another reason they may not care is they may have known that this is an operation above their pay grade.
You mean like Alexander Acosta, who was allegedly told in 2007 and then became part of the Trump administration, I think in the Treasury Department, that it was above his pay grade?
Hey, there's a bunch of corruption here. Oh, yeah, don't touch that, by the way, because that's like an intelligence operation. You don't want to fuck with that. Right? So that kind of thing.
Again, around that same time, and it's so funny, you look at the debunking of it, right? Because you can look it in and any fact checks. If you try to type in FBI, Epstein, Mueller, they'll say, well, it wasn't the FBI that cut the deal with Epstein. No, but Epstein signed FBI paperwork at the same time that this 2007-2008 case was in the works. Now, whether or not he was a paid informant, asset, he had done other work with other intelligence agencies, who cares? We know that he did some kind of a deal at that point with the FBI.
I've seen the deal that you're talking about.
Yes.
The PDF of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets fact checked. No, it was Acosta. And the thing is that sweetheart deal, he wasn't even in jail. He was there sometimes during the day. He was able to leave. Private investigators followed him from the jail to estates and homes during his incarceration, where they saw and women go into the homes Jeffrey Epstein was staying in. And that revelation didn't come out until after his arrest in New York, and it's still not discussed. It just shows you how corrupt this system is and how it really went out of its way for Epstein and his network, and in many ways still does today with people like Sarah Kellen, Leslie Groff, Nadia Marcinkova, never being criminally charged, Jay.
Yeah, I just read this kind of an obscure thing about Lord Victor Rothschild as perhaps the fifth man in the Cambridge spy ring. So I've been reading deeper into the Cambridge spy ring stuff in the last few months. And one thing that one of the authors theorized was that with decent evidence, is that there may have actually been not just the Cambridge spy ring of, the 8 gay, Soviets that were at Cambridge. There was actually a giant blackmail operation is one guy's theory, and that actually Lord Victor had not just 4 people, but like 20 people that were key figures in British intelligence and in the government. And so that's why and how he was actually able to play both sides, because you can read KGB colonels at the time who had interactions with Rothschild and his crew, trying to leak information and trying to play both sides, both British intelligence and Soviets. The reason I say all that is that appears to possibly be the model for how then Robert Maxwell set up his operation. And that's Ghislaine's dad. And so she apparently probably learned this type of operation. And you can think of it like a really, like a weird business operation, right? It's like a business model of compromise and blackmail that's used then by different, sectors of the intelligence apparatus.
You know, and again, the article I was just showing is a great example of that in the generation before Maxwell that highlights the FBI, British intelligence, and the fact that Lord Mountbatten.
That's it. That ties into what I was talking about with the theory about Lord, because Mountbatten was in the circles of Lord Victor. Because Victor was British intelligence, and he was always sort of portraying himself as, you know, this super anti-communist guy. But in reality, it looks like he may not have been, because he was funding the book called Spycatcher by Peter Wright. And one of the theories is that the reason that Peter Wright could never really catch who was doing all of the handling of these Soviet is because it was his funder, Lord Victor, who was constantly deflecting him off into other places. But it was actually the funder himself that was trying to play both sides and had all this dirt on people like, I think Mountbatten comes up in that book.
Yeah, and Mountbatten, again, they had documentation, and I've actually shown the file here, where the FBI said he had a quote-unquote perversion for young boys. And allegedly, according to this article, he was told that other files on the Earl were destroyed after British royalty asked for them. And Lord Mountbatten, of course, never brought to justice, instead accelerated on the global stage, right, on the UN stage, on this NATO stage throughout his career. And then you get to somebody like his grandnephew, right, who is Prince Andrew. And one of the things that people don't relate to him in the fact that he was buddy-buddy with Epstein is that he was the nation's arms dealer. So these people are always involved in intelligence. They're always involved in the arms trade. And then they're often involved in an oligarchical, generational, nepotistic, social Darwinist bloodline class, Jay.
Yeah, and don't forget the drug trade. I mean, the British Empire, British East India Company, I mean, they made their fortune through opium and basically the illegal trafficking of, I guess it's legal if you say that you're the British Empire's, you know, licensed trafficker. I mean, in that case, they're no different than like Big Pharma, right? Oh, it's legal because it's Big Pharma. But yeah, it's the same model of running the black markets, basically. So that the overlap between organized crime and the intelligence operations is there is no it's all overlap. Right? So at this point, right, basically and if I recall, the OSS took over the drug lanes that had previously been run by British and French intelligence. So French and British intelligence ran Golden Triangle, Golden Crescent. When America stepped up to be the new global empire, I just read a book on how this was concocted by Bill Donovan, Paul Hellawell, and James Jesus Angleton that came up with the idea to fund the black operations with the heroin trade. And that's why they needed to make the alliance with the Sicilian mafia and all that. Anyway, I've been doing a bunch of lectures and talks on this lately. So yeah, that's the history of this. And why would we think it's any different now? I mean, it's the same model of how you run things. I think Brzezinski somewhere even says that to run the world, you have to control not just the open markets, but you also have to control the black markets.
100%. Jay Dyer, Jay's analysis, a pleasure as always. You're all over the place, like I've said before. You're touring, you're giving lectures, you do the Twitter spaces. You can be found at jaysanalysis.com and sites like Rockfin, where people can check out your premium material.
And we have a pilgrimage to Italy if people want to join us for what we call Orthodox Italy. So people that are interested in, no, we're not going to the dungeons under the Vatican. So don't get your hopes up if you were hoping to go meet reptilians in the basement of the Vatican. No, it's more of a pilgrimage where we'll be going to a bunch of different Italian cities. But it is open to people that are interested in that kind of a thing. It's a little pricey, so maybe not for everybody. But if you're interested, the links are there for that too. So that's everything that's coming up in terms of live events. And then, of course, every Friday I host show, Fourth Hour, and just churning out the content on YouTube and Rockfin, like you've been pointing out.
Well, you're kicking ass. You're taking names. We love having you here. And folks, I do want to thank you if you did come over to the premium portion of the broadcast. If you're watching this on the replay, consider signing up. $10 a month or $100 for the year at redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. To me, it's not red, it's not blue, it's not right, it's not left. It's all about right and wrong and exposing everything and everyone when they stray away from truth, justice, and what should be the American way. Thank you all, and I will see you on the flip side.